Now let's go one step further, even. Remember we had our buttons here, and let's see where's let's go a step further now, and let's look at our button click handlers for the colors. We created this function setColorIfs to help us to know which is the current color, so that we would know what color to go to next, right? Well, to do that, we have this long if-else-if block, right? Which is a bit of code. And notice something else. Now, this block has the same colors as in our color array that we defined up here. Wouldn't it be nice if we could use the color array to have the button change colors? So let's do that. Here's an illustration of the three main arrays that we're going to be dealing with in our code. Okay. First one is this colors array, which is of type color, and it contains a list of the colors that we're going to be using in our program. Okay, and of course each of those colors has an index associated with it, right, from 0 to 5, right? Then we have this we have the guess array, which is of type integer, and it contains indices into the colors array. Okay, so for example, if the first color of the guess, if I want that to be orange, then the contents of this first element will be the index that corresponds to orange, which is 1. See why it's of type integer? Because it contains numbers. It doesn't contain the actual colors. I don't want it to contain the actual color orange, because I want to know what place in the colors array that color has. And that's going to become more clear as we progress with the program. Then the third array is the buttons array, which is of type button, and it contains, each element contains one of the 4 color buttons on our screen. And there's a 1-to-1 correlation between the elements in the guess array and the elements in the buttons array, denoted by these lines right here. Okay, so if I want to know what color button 2 has, then I look at the second element in the guess array, because button 2 is the second element in the buttons array, index 1. I look at index 1 in the guess array, which is the second element, and I see, oh, the number here is 5, and then I look up the color that has index 5 in the colors array, which is purple. So button 2 is purple. Okay? So let's go back to our program. Remember, this is the one that we created. That was one of the first functions we wrote as part of this program. And we're using this long if-else-if block, right? And there's a few things I don't like about it. First of all, there's a lot of code here. And wherever you have a lot of code, you have maintenance issues. Like if you ever want to make any changes to it, it's going to be annoying. Also, notice that we have the same 6 colors are in this if-else block as are in this colors array. So I'd like to somehow use the colors array to have the buttons change color. So like if a button is red, then when somebody clicks on that button, I'd like it to simply go to the next color in the array. I shouldn't even care what color it currently is in the array. I should just know that whatever color it is, I want it to go to the next color in the array. Okay? So I'm going to do that in several steps. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another array that will contain the index of the color that each button has. So this will not be an array of colors, it's going to be an array of integers, where each integer is actually the location, is the index of that button's color in the colors array. Okay? It'll become more clear as I do this. So private, and we're going to have an array of integers. So int, square brackets, I'm going to give it a name, I'm going to call it guess. Be an array of integers. And because initially when we first start the program, the buttons have a generic color. It's not even one of our 6 colors. I'm gonna initialize the indices for each of the buttons to -1. Now -1 is not a valid array index in any language that I'm aware of. So this is fine. This is what we actually want. The buttons start out having an invalid color. It's not one of our 6 colors. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, like that. Okay, so now we have an array of color indices for our 4 guess buttons. And what I'm also going to have, I'm going to create another array. I know this is complicated. I mean, it seems complicated because I'm creating all of these arrays and you don't know why. But I'm trying to put as much information as I can into the arrays so I can make the functions a lot simpler. Okay? So bear with me here, and this will also make our next code that we're going to write a lot simpler. So this will make our whole program simpler. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create an array of buttons. Call it buttons. And what this will eventually contain is the 4 color buttons. Okay, we're gonna stick them into an array, which will make it easier for us to access them and change them. And there are 4 buttons in the array. Now I would have liked to have just initialized this right here and tell it tell it what the elements are going to be, but the compiler won't let me do that. So I need to initialize this array down here in my constructor. So I'm going to do it before I call the button new function. I don't know if I have to, but I just want to make sure I do this very early on so that there's no chance that any other function is going to use these buttons before they've been initialized. And I'm going to set element 0 of the buttons to button 1. And I'm going to copy and paste this thing. Be faster. Okay. Index 1 will contain button 2. Index 2 will contain button 3. And index 3 will contain button 4. Okay. Now this should just run just fine and it won't affect anything yet. Okay. So the code doesn't know about the array of buttons yet. I have not used it yet, but I want to make sure that everything works. So you should always, whenever you add a few new lines of code, you should always run your program and make sure it still compiles and runs.